Let's say it's the husband that's left, and let's say he was the only one on the mortgage. The wife who's staying in the house is not responsible for that mortgage. However, the home will be foreclosed on and the bank will take it back. So the first thing that I'm going to advise her to do is to contact the mortgage company.
Today, we're going to be meeting with Steve Stearns, branch manager of Thrive Financial, and we're going to be talking about mortgages and divorces. The Senior Citizens Forum is being sponsored by Benefits for You True Insurance Services, where we provide Medicare Advantage plans, Medicare supplemental plans, and prescription drug plans for people that are 65 years of age and older, and for people under the age of 65 with certain qualifying disabilities. Well, welcome back to a Senior Citizens Forum.
Thank you, Janice.
I'm excited. We have a really great topic, divorces and mortgages, and Steve is a branch manager of Thrive Financial.
That's right.
And Steve became a certified divorce lending professional. What does that exactly mean, and how did you get into this, Steve?
I've been in the business for over 30 years, so a lot of my older customers are getting older, and I have seen, many divorces, of course, from my clientele. So I've tried to build my skills, and then I had a top realtor that I work with become a certified divorce realtor. And she introduced me to a program where I could take additional education. And actually, before April 30th, I'm doing my continuing education, for the following year. But I've learned a couple of extra tips and tricks that can help people with mortgage going through divorce.
That's such an emotional time for people. Mm-hmm. How's it been working with people, dealing with their emotions and dealing with anger, which is part of the emotion? You have to be so patient.
Yeah. Well, Janice, it's interesting. You don't know all my background, but I've actually trained in a course in spiritual psychology, and I've trained in somatic psychotherapy, and I do some coaching on the side as well. So I'm kind of uniquely trained in a way to deal with people's emotions and what they're going through. And when we're doing a mortgage for someone, we ask very, very personal questions. Other than their sex life, we're going to ask about everything, right?
Fun part, yeah.
See their bank statements, see what they spend their money on. So that can be very opening up for a client, because we're really kind of opening up their whole life. And then if there's a divorce on top of that, there can be a lot of emotion there.
Well, I know I've been through with you, okay, because you are my mortgage broker, mm-hmm. Okay. The questions and the what you have to produce can be overwhelming.
Yes, I'm really examining everything, yeah.
Right. And then to add divorce on top of that.
Yes.
And that would even be, I can't even imagine the stress.
There are times where I'm really just listening, because people sometimes have issues around money. And then if we add divorce on top of that, part of my job is really just to listen and to be there as a safe space for someone as I'm going through their mortgage.
A couple comes in, they're going through divorce, okay? And they are senior citizens, mm-hmm. Okay? Because I know you deal a lot with people coming in where children are involved, and that's a completely different set of circumstances, okay? But for seniors, I would think they would be more established financially mm-hmm. than, let's say, a younger couple with small children.
Yes.
Or a couple that has children in college and mm-hmm. they're really in debt, okay? But for a senior, if you've been married 35, 40, 50 years, mm-hmm. okay? Now all of a sudden you're dividing everything up. How does that work with a mortgage? And the financial part of it. Then I'm going to add one more thing to it. You could be more than one piece of property.
Oh, yes. You have more than one piece of property, there can be a business. You said at the front, there's a divorced couple and they come in to see you. This is probably going to be the most unlikely scenario because typically they start to become divided in how they want to talk about things and how they want to share. So more often than not, I'm either going to be talking to one spouse or the other. Occasionally, they are amicable enough. We can really have a great conversation together. You know, some of the dynamics there are who's financed the home, right? Are they both on title on the house? Are they both on the financing on the house? There's some laws that have been passed that can allow the spouse, even if they're not on title on the property and they're receiving it through to the divorce, they can take over that mortgage even though the other spouse took out the mortgage only in their name. So we can educate them on this. Some people think, oh, the mortgage was in my husband's name only. I'm getting the house through the divorce. I've got to sell it. Now, there is a disadvantage in that for the person that's on the mortgage because they're going to lose the house and the other person's going to make the payment, but they're not released from liability.
Really gets things complicated.
It gets things complicated, and the best time to plan the mortgage, if you own a home and you're going to go through a divorce, the best time is before the divorce is final for sure, and potentially before even the divorce attorneys. So we might talk about strategy of how things work out the best.
Now, you just mentioned the divorce attorney. Do you work with the divorce attorney at this time when you're getting ready to do the mortgage? So if it goes to court, because a lot of this can go to court.
If they choose a good quality divorce attorney, they typically do want to talk to me, and we can talk the specifics of how the mortgage might look.
Okay.
Another thing to keep in mind, this is a real important one when we come into divorce. One spouse, let's say, has earned the bulk of the money and has more money and assets. The other spouse is going to keep the house, but they don't have a high level of income. Okay, if I get to it before the attorneys or get the attorney involved, rather than the spouse with more money in the bank giving a big lump sum to their spouse, they can take that lump sum, put it into a trust, and that trust will pay monthly income to the person that doesn't have a lot of income, and we can qualify for a new mortgage on the home based on that trust income.
Does that also work with a senior citizen? Say one person worked and the other person stayed home.
Yeah, so let's say the stay-at-home spouse is going to remain in the home. And if they're currently not working and let's say their Social Security is fairly low because they didn't do most of the work, they took care of the house and the children, for example, that's why we'd want to set up a trust rather than give them a lump sum from their ex, because then we've got a monthly cash flow that we can qualify for a new mortgage.
Okay.
Another thing to consider, you know, when we're looking at a divorce, a gray divorce, you know, of seniors, is maybe the person isn't really going to be able to afford a mortgage payment and there's significant equity in the house. Another option for them to look at is maybe putting a reverse mortgage on the house to stay in the home yet not have any monthly payment, just need to pay the taxes and insurance on the home.
So if you have that reverse mortgage, how does that affect your people that are going to inherit when you pass on? I never quite understand that.
That's a great question, Janice, because some people, I just had a woman yesterday tell me, oh, I don't want a reverse mortgage, I lose my home. And so with a reverse mortgage, your home stays in title exactly as it is, hopefully in a trust. Okay, so just for everybody that's listening, if you own real estate and your home's not in a trust, you seriously want to look at getting into a trust, because even if you've got kids to inherit it, it'll be probated and cost your children money if your home's not in a trust. So let's assume that you get a reverse mortgage and it's just a single person after the divorce. If they hold the title in the trust, their trust spells out that this house now goes to, let's say, their 2 children. The one unknown part with a reverse mortgage is we don't know how much the home is going to be worth when they die. Mm-hmm. And we don't know exactly how much the mortgage balance will be, because the mortgage balance grows since there's no payment made, but they're guaranteed not to have a negative balance. So the worst case scenario that could ever happen is the home is worth less than how much is owed on the mortgage, and there's nothing left for the family. That's not normally the case. Yeah.
Well, especially where we're at in California, that's
Right.
not normally going to be the
Values
case.
are going up, yeah.
But just one really quick thing, going back of why it's so important to have that trust. You don't want things to go into probate. Probate can take several years
Yes.
to go through and be very expensive.
Well, and the probate court also decides how things are going to happen. Even if you have a will, they can decide, oh no, it's not going to be per your will. They're going to divide the assets in a different way.
So if you're going through divorce, you want to make sure you redo your trust.
You certainly do. Yeah.
Okay.
I just completed a reverse mortgage for a gentleman, hasn't been married since 2020, and the house was still held under him and his ex-wife's trust. So we took it out of trust, we closed his loan, and now he's working on a new trust, and we'll roll that property into the new trust.
Which is so important.
Yes.
I mean, to have that family trust, and you correct it, you also correct the insurances that go along with it.
Yes.
Yeah, so very important. But on you counseling someone, so if I came in and let's say I owned a couple of properties, and now I'm going through divorce. So how would that be handled? Would that be handled with the attorney who gets what, and then?
If you come to me first, let's say, or maybe you've gone to the attorney and the attorney's referred you to me, the very first thing that I want to figure out from you is what is it that you want? You know, do you want to keep one house and have your ex keep the other house, or is he going to keep his retirement and you're going to keep both houses? So the first thing I want to look at, what's your goal? If you want to retain one or both of the homes, then I want to come up with a solution of how you can retain one or both homes.
Okay. You're going to look at what people's incomes are.
Yep.
Okay. You're going to listen to what the situation is, which is the same thing I do in insurance. You listen to the whole thing, okay? And then you're going to help give the people the information, what they need to help them make the decisions.
Exactly. Yeah. And the more amicable the divorce, the more we can get the couple to cooperate, right? And make it come out for both of them the best it can.
Let's take the example now. Divorce just started.
Okay.
Okay. Hasn't even started. Fresh. Okay. Person who paying for the mortgage payment picks up and leaves. And all of a sudden you're there in the house. Is that person responsible for paying that mortgage once they leave?
In California, mortgages are deeds of trust. So typically the only thing that a lender can do is take the house back. Let's say it's the husband that's left, and let's say he was the only one on the mortgage. The wife who's staying in the house is not responsible for that mortgage. However, the home will be foreclosed on and the bank will take it back. So the first thing that I'm going to advise her to do is to contact the mortgage company. She's going to write a letter and she's going to mention the Garn-St. Germain Act. This is a piece of legislation that went through that then allows her, even though she's not on the mortgage, to communicate with the mortgage lender and assume that mortgage should they go through a divorce.
I talked to a lot of people who have been in long-term marriages, and always one of them knows nothing about the finances that went.
That's very typical. Yeah.
I would say, just talk to her, okay, or talk to him. I have no idea what's going on. And all of a sudden, and this happens to people who, when they go through death, same thing happens. Oh my God, I did not know how to take care of this, okay? Which is very emotional and overwhelming.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you have a couple come in and you're in this situation.
So normally I'm going to get one or the other of the couple. You know, like I said, it's kind of rare that I get both. I'm going to do my best to advocate for whichever customers coming to me and asking for advice. So I recently did a mortgage for a woman who had never written a check, never paid a bill. Her husband passed away. She didn't want to continue living in that home. Referred to me by the realtor, and we walked her through the entire process. I talked to her for her financial planner. I gave a referral to another financial planner because she wasn't seeming to get along, and we got her into the new home. So that's something I'm really willing to do, is hold somebody's hand And it's not that there's anything wrong with them. They just don't have the experience in dealing with the finances.
You mentioned that you only see usually one part of the couple. You don't.
That's typical, yeah.
So do you work with the other person at all in helping them with the mortgage?
Typically, they're going to be getting advice from the other end. A lot of times when people are going through a divorce, they don't have a high trust level. They're very activated, they're very emotional, and they feel like maybe that's somebody they can't trust anymore. So I may have a very logical person I'm helping, and they say, hey, will you talk to my spouse? And I say, sure. And that person says, no, I don't want to talk to him. You chose him.
So that makes things more complicated.
Does make things a little more complicated. Now, I can work with both and have in the past, and folks that still want to remain friends and just decided that their lives don't belong together anymore are, of course, easier to deal with because then I can talk to both of them.
And when you have a couple that can communicate and work together, it makes life so much easier.
It certainly does. And the way that I would say about this sort of mortgage planning through a divorce, it's just like planning for your retirement. Folks who plan for their retirement and save money and put it away typically are going to retire better than someone who doesn't have a plan. If someone's about to go through a divorce and they own a home or homes, it's best to get to somebody like me to come up with a plan so they come out better.
They should be talking to someone about their finances going forward.
Yes.
And I know you have good resources of referring people to financial planners,
tax preparers.
Tax preparers, and sometimes, just to get started. I mean, I think nowadays things are easier. Everything is just done automatically, through the bank on the computer. But there's so many people, and especially the senior levels, that don't even know how to work a computer.
Yes.
Are very uncomfortable. So if they're going back and writing a check, this is new for them.
Yeah. We've had one client that the lender that we were working with that had the best interest rate would only do it if they had an email and they could receive electronic documents. So we brought the client into our office and we helped him create an email address and took him through the mortgage process to save him money rather than choose a bank that would do it without an email. So we do that sort of service too.
That is really great because it's so needed, because I know when I work with seniors, I'm always surprised when I find somebody that is computer savvy. Mm-hmm. More than likely, especially if they're 70 or older. Mm-hmm. Okay, but I even find some 60-year-olds today that they don't like the computer. They're not going to use the computer.
Yep.
And I met with a gentleman once who said, I don't have a phone. I'm not going to have a phone. I'm not going to have a computer. And I said, we'll take care of you.
Probably the biggest thing that I see, Janice, that I just encourage people to reach out is people are afraid because they've never done this before. They're financially illiterate because their spouse has done it. And it's not actually as complicated, I think, as people think it is. There's just a big fear going in. And most people are smart enough and can figure it out as long as they've got a good advisor.
If you have several good advisors, you can make it through. It is scary. Mm-hmm. It is overwhelming. And all of a sudden, just the minor thing of like, oh my God, I've never taken the trash out.
Yes.
Okay. Now I've got to remember to take the can out to the curb.
Right.
Something simple. Now you're looking at the finances. I had a cousin who passed away, and his widow knew nothing about the books. She worked. She just gave his check, went into the family thing. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden she was faced, she's lucky she had this problem, with all this money in, stocks and bonds and properties. Knew nothing about any of that. Did her job and didn't worry about it.
This is very similar to the client I was just talking about whose husband passed. Yeah.
She goes, I learned so much after I had to take over these responsibilities.
Yeah.
And going through the grief process. And even divorces have a grief process they go through.
They certainly do. I've been through one many years ago, and there's definitely a process.
Yes. It's just different, but it still has a grief process.
Yes, it can feel like a small death.
Yeah, it is a small death.
Yeah.
I mean, even after 40 or 50 years, it can be a small death.
Yes.
Because you're letting go of something.
Yes.
That was major part of your life.
Yes, someone who's very important to you.
Yeah, and some people I know would be going, thank God it's over.
Some are.
Yeah. But I think most of the time it is emotional. Now, what happens with the mortgage? We mentioned it a little bit a while ago. The property can be sold.
Typically, we're going to see two things that happen in divorce with the mortgage. Number one is the family home is sold and the proceeds are divided. And they figure out how they're going to divide the proceeds. Maybe one's got a larger 401k, so they get less money out of the house. But home gets sold, proceeds are divided. That's pretty straightforward. The one that's a little more complicated is one of the couple would like to stay in the home. And typically what happens is we're going to refinance the existing mortgage so there's no liability on the person who's leaving the marriage.
So you help the person staying in the home get that new mortgage.
Yes.
To go through that. It's cumbersome as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I do it all the time.
But you do it all the time, so
Right.
It's every day, so it's easy for
Yes.
you, okay? So that's like this morning, we were at a meeting and I did a presentation for me, which is every day.
Right.
It's simple to understand, but when you don't know it, it's overwhelming.
Right. I had plenty of questions that we talked about earlier. Yeah.
Right. Okay. You had a lot of questions for me. Okay.
Yeah.
So in doing this, people should feel free when they're selecting someone who does something like you.
We only lend in 3 states, which is California, Arizona, and Texas.
So you can help anybody in those three.
In those three states, exactly.
Okay. Are you able to recommend different people that may be?
I will only recommend people that I completely trust and would do business with myself. That's maybe in half the states I have that kind of network. So it depends upon what state. But if someone were to call me and say, hey, do you know someone good in this state? Like say Colorado, I've got somebody great in Colorado. If I don't know somebody great, I won't refer.
That's comfortable to know. Yeah. So if somebody felt like they needed to talk to you about it that was in another state, can you give them advice?
I could go over their situation. I could say, hey, I can't do a mortgage for you, and here's the way I would do it, or here's some thoughts for you to think about. Yes.
Do you have a fee that you charge extra for this? That's being that you're not doing the mortgage?
Janice, the only way I get paid is closing a mortgage for folks. And so when I give this service, if I'm helping somebody from out of state, I might ask at the end of the conversation, if you think I was a lot of help to you, please refer me to your family and friends. And that's the way I operate my business. It's kind of old-fashioned, but I want to help whoever comes to me in whatever way I can help them. If I happen to close a loan, then I get paid.
I think that's the best way. Mm-hmm. I love referrals because referrals, that means somebody else trusted you to give that referral. Right. And so they're so important, a referral.
Yes.
And I know you and I are from a referral networking group.
Yeah. And the reason I'm so careful with who I'll refer is I want the customer to be able to come back to me for a referral to somebody else as well that I know. So if I refer someone who doesn't perform, I'm not credible anymore in that person's eyes.
I feel the same way. Mm-hmm. And I know if you referred someone to me, I'm going to definitely take extra care. Not that I don't give all my clients an extra care, but I know you would do the same thing.
Yes.
Because that trust level is so important. As
I'm getting closer to my retirement, this thing becomes more near and dear to me, helping people, in the second stage of their life, where when I was young and in my 20s and got into the business, I was really excited about helping first-time homebuyers. And it's not that I'm not excited about helping a first-time homebuyer, but my focus is becoming more on this area.
Well, because you understand where people are at. You understand that you have grandchildren.
Yes.
Okay? And going through that divorce and having that, sometimes one is left out a little bit more than the other because It's hard on the family. Believe it or not, even though if you're going through a divorce, I don't mean you personally, okay? Your families are going through the divorce.
Oh, for sure,
too.
Especially the children, yeah.
Adult children go through it too, because
they certainly do.
I had the experience of my parents getting divorced after 36 years of marriage. Mm-hmm. And it was very hard on my brother and I.
Yeah.
All of those types of things are in there. Well, thank you for all this great information. Do you have anything extra to add that we didn't cover?
You're super welcome. I'll just add that if anybody wants to contact me, there's no charge, and I'm happy to chat with them, and no pressure.
Steve and I would love to answer any comments. If you're watching this on any social media, YouTube, or any of the other outlets, please give us comments, because we would love to learn from your comments.
Yeah,
That's
I'd
how
be happy to.
I love comments because it teaches me sometimes something that I don't know.
Yeah, what people are thinking. They hear the information.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate your comments. Thank you for watching a Senior Citizens Forum, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you, Steve,
Thanks, Janice.
for joining me again. Thank you.